What's up, ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy Guy Pandemonium bringing another video for the GP division here. We are going to be talking about annexing towns and how to select the best town to annex at that point in time in your game. So we're going to go ahead and scroll on up here. As you can tell, I am playing France. This is kind of where we're all located along. Now I have already annexed one town, which was the Grand Bahamas, which is a video that should be releasing here very shortly. For you guys to watch. It is a full video. It's an hour long. A lot of ship fights, a lot of good stuff. So, let's go ahead and get into it. We can kind of also discuss why I chose the Grand Bahama as well as my first target for annexing. So, when you look at annexing in your free game, you're going to want to look at all three nations at the closest towns they have to you. At that point in time, the Grand Bahama was, as it was part of the Netherlands. England is over here at Puerto Padre, and Spain is up here at Havana. So, out of those three locations, Grand Bahama, first thing to look at location is closest. So Grand Bahama pretty much has 1 point right off the get-go with its location. And why the location is important is because I can actually go here to Mosquito, get the administration for this town, build a large shipyard, and then stockpile additional ships on top of my captains that I'm going to go into battle with their ships. So if a captain did happen to lose or eventually sinks, I can then release ships out of Mosquito, put the captain in it, put a full crew in, and immediately within a couple days get him back down here into Grand Bahamas, continuing the fight on to annex the Grand Bahamas. That comes in very much use when you're going with later and higher tiered towns. Grand Bahama was a 1 of 6, which brings me to the second point, is the town's tier depends on how long the annex process will take. 0 being the lowest, 6 being the highest. Grand Bahama is a 1, was a 1, and Puerto Padre was also 1. However, Havana is a 3 of 6, meaning Havana would take more time to annex than either Puerto Padre or the Grand Bahamas. So that is 2 points Grand Bahama, 1 point Puerto Padre, 0 point Havana. Now, the next thing you want to look at is when you go to the Viceroy tab, there is in fact the Nations tab, and this tab is something I look at greatly when I'm choosing on who I'm going to annex first. Spain has 48 gun fleets, meaning they have 48 different fleets that could have anywhere from 1 ship with guns to 6 to 8 ships with guns. It just depends. So when you look at this, Spain, Havana, 48 gun ships or gun fleets. There is a lot of ships that have the potential to come and continuously push you off Havana, which will make it a very difficult target. England, 26, will make it a much harder target as well, but not as hard as Spain. And Netherlands only had 12 when I started the annexation, so they had the fewest amount of gun fleets available. After I have successfully annexed and destroyed quite a few, you can see they're down to only 3 gun fleets, meaning there's about 7 or 8 fleets I had to fight. They're all between 4 and 5 ships, and sometimes even more than that. So annexing is difficult regardless of where you're at. The waves are going to constantly come, which is why you need to have the correct ships and the correct captains in order to really, do some damage and make this annex a lot easier on yourself. So, looking at the nations, it means that Netherlands has fewer ships to send than Spain and England when I am annexing their town. Now, I also have to consider that Spain has 29 towns, England 15, and Netherlands only had 7 towns. So they are in a very small congested area. So I was probably going to see the majority of that force, which I believe I did see majority of that force. So it's just something else to think about when you're annexing, is even though one may have more, like Spain and England right now, if I'm looking at them, Spain has double the amount of towns as England, so they should have double the amount of gunships, which they don't. So realistically, if you look at a town-to-ship fleet ratio, Spain is easier than England. Now, is that the case? Probably not, because Spain can send more ships to you at once. It just means they're more spread out across the map with their 48 ships, whereas England's a little more condensed with their 26, making it a little bit harder to fight England off than you would Spain. So that is a third thing to look at when you're looking at these towns to annex. So 1, location and its relative distance to where one of your towns administered are, so you can stockpile ships in case if a captain does happen to go down, is one big bonus point. 2, the tier level of that town, whether it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or a 6 out of 6 tier town, depends on how long it takes to annex. And you have to thoroughly ask yourself, can I have troops or captains and additional boats brought over in a quick enough time in order to maintain that annex process? If the answer is no, then you better have some really good captains with some really good skills, maxed out with some really good ships and a lot of tactics, because they're going to crash on you and it's going to be brutal if you do not happen to have that option of having additional ships come in when one captain goes down. So that is a very key defining moment, are those two things. And of course, third, as we just discussed, with the viceroys and looking at the nations and seeing how many gun fleets they have to how many towns they have, and kind of figuring out what you think you're going to have to fight off, how many ships you're going to have to fight off, and going from there. Now, another thing that you want to pay attention to, though, is when you are at war with another nation, you want to make sure that nation is not allianced with another nation. For instance, France and Netherlands, me and the Netherlands, are at war. If England or Spain were in an alliance with the Netherlands, I would have to take into consideration that any of Netherlands' territories near England and Spain will probably be receiving aid from Spain or England to prevent annexing. So, if I take that into consideration, I could have gone for Andros. It's not much further than the Grand Bahamas, but it does have England right here. And it also has Spain where they can come down. I know you're saying, well, Spain's got to come this way, but then they'd have to come through all these other French ships that are not mine, but the actual computers. So that is another thing to think of. Regardless, annexing a town is going to be difficult no matter what you're doing, but taking these simple steps and kind of preparing yourself, making sure you have the right captains, the right boats, bonus boats built up at a location near where you're annexing, and choosing the right nation at the right time to annex is a big, huge bonus. So that should cover all of your basics. Now, if you want to get into the very technicalities of it, I guess, you can also look at what resources they have versus the resources you already have. So if I looked over here at these 4 that I have, St. Augustine, Port Orange, Mosquito, and Florida Keys, we can look at what they have here for commodities. They have corn, brick, hemp, rope, and beer. Now, what you can do is you can actually see what items they're missing. So they have cotton too. So if they have cotton, if I look up here at Florida Keys and Grand Bahama at the same time, I see that Florida has its own wheat, so it can manufacture beer if it wants. It already has hemp, so it can do hemp and rope if it wants. Has brick, so it could do brick if it wants. And then if you come over here and rotate and look at Mosquito, trying to get these ships out of the way here. Same thing, we've got cotton, we can do everything there. So the only thing I'm really missing from the Grand Bahamas is corn. But then if you rotate and you look at Port Orange, oh, we don't have corn. We haven't had corn at 3 locations, but I go to St. Augustine and I have corn. So there was no commodity reason for me to go for the Grand Bahamas. So that's just one of those little things you can look at if you really want to go into that much detail. But as I said, the 3 main ones: location, the distance from an administered town of yours where you can constantly launch boats back if a captain sinks. 2, level of the town, what tier is it? And 3, how strong is that nation and how much opposition do you expect to have to face? 4, captain selection. There's a separate video on that one that I will link in the description below. And 5, the ship fighting and ships you're going to want to select to send into your annexing, which I could also link in the description down below as well. So that is all, guys. I appreciate you guys for stopping by. Hopefully this video makes a little bit more sense into how I dissect and choose who I'm going to annex. But at the end of the day, guys, that's all. Peace.